Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 3 of Doors Open. Today I'm joined by my other best friend Martin, a guy from Slovakia. He's also just turned 20, I think. Have you just turned 20, Martin? Martin, say hello.
Yes, 2 days ago.
Good stuff. And we're going to talk a bit about some issues that he wants to raise within the medical teaching framework. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So go ahead, take it away from us, do your thing, and I'll see what questions I can come up with.
So the story I wanted to share today was not actually a story that's happened to me, but a story that's happened to countless of people of color. The diagnosis of diseases that present differently on brown skin. Let me give you an example. There is an illness called meningococcemia. The primary diagnostic factor is a rash, very visible on people with white skin, right? But on people with brown skin, it's much less visible. And this often leads to patients with brown skin who come in with meningococcemia to not be diagnosed. You know, the doctor sees symptoms like a headache and nausea, and these are very general symptoms that don't necessarily need to mean a severe illness such as meningococcemia. And they don't receive a diagnosis, and this can often have fatal consequences if it's not diagnosed. Whereas if a white person comes in, the doctor sees the rash, makes a quick diagnosis, leading to better outcomes for the patient.
Right. Well, I mean, that's really cool and that's interesting news, but how did you come up to find about this whole issue? I mean, did you know about this before? Was this something that you raised about in your medical school early on? Is it something that you know recently?
Well, I guess I've always been aware of it as a medical student, that I'm not being taught it, but the fact that I only was made aware that that it is an issue and how big of an issue it is because of this Black Lives Matter movement, I guess kind of highlights that even I am part of the problem. You know, I wasn't able to realize how severe of an issue this is. This is the problem. We're not realizing the issue. We're not being taught it. And then in our medical careers, when we do become doctors, we are not able to make these diagnoses.
Right. So it sounds to me like the cause of this comes from a very early teaching faculty. You know, the fact that medical students are not learning about this, and it sounds like the solution will be relatively easy, you know, to implement it in the curriculum. Is that going, you know, am I hinting at the right path, or is there some sort of bigger thing that we need to worry about? What do you think?
Well, of course you're hinting at the right path, and you make a great point that the issue stems from the teaching. I, as a medical student, have seen this firsthand. We are not taught the difference in presentation of certain illnesses that do present differently in people of color, if compared to white people. So these are things like rashes, redness on the skin, even some bumps. And there's a plethora of conditions that present this way and lead to a lower rates of diagnosis in black patients. I think actually all of racism stems from how young people are taught about it. You know, no child is born racist and no medical student is born racist. So if we teach this, if we implement this into our curriculum early on, we can tackle racism quite effectively. We need to make this compulsory in our curriculums. In fact, there's a petition right now being signed. It's got over 100,000 signatures already for the GMC, the General Medical Council, to implement these differences in presentation into the curriculum.
Right. Let's for a second, you know, take this a step further and think about the perhaps the long-term effects that it might have, not just on patients but on doctors as well. You know, some sort of butterfly effect, if you will, of this lack of knowledge in medical students. Do you think this might improve? Do you think this might deteriorate the relationship between patients and doctors of different races, or some sort of cause an imbalance in society with regards to healthcare access between the two races?
Well, I think one of the most important aspects of the medical profession is trust. You know, there's been multiple studies about what is the most trusted profession, and almost every time doctors are at the top of that list. And this is key, because if you don't trust your doctor, how are you ever going to let him help you? On the other hand, how can you trust your doctor if you keep hearing these horror stories about black people being mistreated or underdiagnosed with illnesses. There's a significant lack of resources that demonstrate the difference in presentation of these illnesses within the Black community. In fact, if you Google the illness meningococcemia and go on Google Images, you'll have to scroll down very far to find a picture of a person of color. And this is the problem. This is what really struck me. We are starting to become aware of the issue, but the resources out there are just not available widely. My father, who's also a doctor, I remember him telling me a story. He used to work in Detroit in the pediatric emergency room, and in multiple occasions he was told by Black parents, "I don't want my child to see that white doctor." And it begs the question, is this also racism, or is this a sensible move from the white parents, having heard that the Black parents, their child might not be receiving the highest quality of care? Is it reasonable for them to refuse to see a white doctor? And it just creates this vicious cycle of lack of trust and bad care being delivered to patients.
Right. Well, thank you very much for this. Are there any sort of conclusions that you might want to draw from this, or anything that you might want to address with regards to a bigger issue or a bigger purpose? Anything that you want to let out into the world that might help with everything?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's many things to draw from this issue. I think Alex will include the link to a petition that is being signed that I've mentioned previously. Signing this petition could bring us one step closer to solving the issue and actually implementing these changes into medical school curriculums. Another thing that we can do is if medical schools aren't going to educate us, we can educate ourselves. There's an Instagram page called Brown Skin Matters that shows pictures of differences in presentations for a wide variety of illnesses that do present differently in people of color. Once we do start to educate ourselves, we can bring everyone, not just people of the medical community, one step closer to achieving this equality. As I mentioned before, I think racism starts with the education of young people, and if we tackle that issue, I think we can all bring ourselves one step closer to achieving the equality that we strive for and deserve in the world.
Right, so thank you very much for sticking through with episode 3. I hope you learned something new. I definitely did. And, it's crazy to see just how much racism infiltrates within all areas of the world. I personally come from an art background, and so having this knowledge from such a different field and knowing that, there's such deep ingrained problems over there as well that affect the health of people is pretty mind-boggling. As always, please give this video a share if you thought it was valuable, and let your friends know, let them speak up. Have these conversations yourselves, and I hope you see you guys in episode 4.